Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is, of course, Charles Q. Banks, and I'd like to welcome you back to my series of discussion videos in black and white. So today I'll be talking about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and the moral implications of watching it. Because a certain Jared Mithrandir recently commented on one of my videos, and I quote, "FMA Brotherhood is an abomination according to what I've heard," unquote. And that was in response to Charles Likes Chaika the Coffin Princess Part 1, which you can watch on my playlist of my black and white videos. And I said in that video that Chaika the Coffin Princess was made by the same studio, Bones, which also created Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which I deem as a masterpiece of animation. I still understand, I think, what he was getting at with that statement, because whenever Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood comes up in a conversation in a Christian or conservative context, it's always talked about in rather controversial fashion because of the fact that alchemy is at the center of it, and alchemy has a lot of themes associated with it, particularly witchcraft, paganism, those sorts of things, because alchemy is just the oldest version of modern-day chemistry. In the first few centuries AD, people were philosophizing and just talking and theorizing about breaking things down to the smallest elements, and breaking down the smallest elements into their smallest elements, and perhaps finding, at one point, a universal solvent that could allow you, when manipulated, to recreate any other element in the world. This would allow us to create medicines and cure, basically cure cancer, any disease, create panaceas, create the Philosopher's Stone, and that's what they call it. That element, universal element that could dissolve anything and make it into anything, could turn air into gold. That was their intention. They wanted to turn air into gold. That has been disproven by science. We cannot do that. But we owe those principles and those philosophies a lot, because that's where we get modern-day chemistry. So viewing alchemy in that sense really helps to define the context of when someone tries to make a fictional story or fictional world based on alchemy actually being able to do what they theorized it could do with when a Philosopher's Stone is created. Now, the interesting thing about FMA is that Philosopher's Stones exist in the world, but they're so difficult to create that nobody ever does. And yet people are able to recreate a broken radio just by drawing a magical circle around it and thinking magic words, I suppose. Or just thinking of the formula to all of the elements of that particular broken radio, and then magically that radio would come together based on your own skill as an alchemist. And that's very odd. That's very weird, thinking about reality as opposed to that. But if you are someone who is logical, who can parse out between reality and fiction, and not try to demonstrate the exact same thing in a fantastical show in real life, I think you'd be fine with the alchemical portion of FMA, because alchemy is just like any other magical tool used in any fantasy world or piece of media. Gandalf himself in Lord of the Rings uses magic, okay? And that is comprehended as one of the best Christian Catholic authors of our day, J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings. And he accidentally imputed Christian themes into Lord of the Rings. And we can see that in that the magical properties that are seen and the magical powers that are seen in Lord of the Rings are a result directly of the gods and demons of Lord of the Rings. the god Iluvatar created basically angels who could co-create with him, and that's how the world was created. All the angels came together and created their own different portions of the world. This one was over water, this one was over land, this one was over fire, this one was over life, and so on and so forth. And those had their own children and servants, and Gandalf is one of those servants. He's basically a form of lesser angel, and so is Sauron. They just had these powers from the beginning of time because they are as transcendent beings. No other human being can do magic in the world of Lord of the Rings. And so when you see that, you can say, okay, that's not real. That's not how things work right now. But as a Christian, you can believe that angels have supernatural powers, and we as humans can call on angels or demons to do our bidding. As a Christian, you pray to God. As a perhaps a Satanist or something else, you call upon demons. And that's where things get tricky. That's where things get the difference between good and evil really lies, is who you call upon. Do you call upon God, or do you call upon something else? So when you see characters calling upon, I don't know, just calling up their powers to create matter, basically, out of nothing, you're thinking, that looks like demonic witchcraft, And in the show, there is a specific reason for it, because it's a different world than ours. Things do not work the same way. They have a god in this world. This is not an atheistic story. There are characters in FMA that are atheists, such as Edward Elric, the main character for the majority of the show, is in fact an atheist, and that is, he says that very openly. Does the fact that the protagonist is an atheist mean that it's propounding atheism? Not necessarily. Does that mean that we have to be an atheist to enjoy Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood? Not at all. Because, number one, it's a fiction. You don't have to agree with any of the characters or their stances in order to enjoy the story. I myself do that all the time. Just watch something that is basically against a lot of my thoughts and opinions, or against my convictions, people doing things that are against my convictions, and say, oops, they did that wrong, and I assent to and acknowledge the fact in my head that people are doing things that are against my own religion, and, it's like, I know that they're doing something wrong according to me. I don't have to allow that to influence me. I don't have to become an atheist just because I like Edward Elric as a character and he's trying to get me to turn into an atheist. And vice versa. People don't have to watch Christian stuff and become Christians because of it. We wish they would, but it's the same difference, There's that freedom of thought that comes from any piece of entertainment or art. Now, the issue is when art has an objective influence anyway. Any piece of art, any piece of entertainment has influential power. And a lot of people might think, oh, I like Edward Elric. I like his point of view. He's a real rogue, and I like him. I want to be like him, so I'll be an atheist. I'm sure some people, some millennials, watched Fullmetal Alchemist and thought that and became atheists, and just lived out that road. That doesn't have to be the case. If you, like I said before, if you are someone who is logical, someone who can parse out reality from fiction, you can reject any principle that any character is trying to promote and just appreciate it as another point of view. So, that being said, children who are very easily influenced should probably not watch this show. There are so many things that are traumatizing, for one, but that could also influence them into wanting to create magical circles and do these things. And it may not really have any negative impact, but it may allow them, just like Harry Potter, to justify seeking out a lifestyle of witchcraft, real witchcraft, because certain shows like Harry Potter and FMA justified them in the narrative. The problem is, those things aren't necessarily justifiable in our world or to a Christian. And that's why I say there are immature people and mature people. And you can even be grown up and be immature. So this show is definitely not for everyone. But it is one of the best animated shows I've ever seen. There's Sakuga, which is really fast and fluid animation in action scenes that really holds up today and is some of the best animation for action scenes I've ever seen. So in that sense, this show is a masterpiece, and I would recommend it to anyone who is not faint of heart and who is not easily swayed. So do with that what you will. I personally don't love the show. I think it was well done, interesting, and has a lot of crazy themes. And you just have to be very discerning with how each show will affect you. If you're watching Full Metal Alchemist and it's giving you a really negative feeling, if you just feel bad after watching it, don't watch the thing. I'm reminded of one of Paul's letters saying that if certain things, he was talking about food, certain things are permissible and not all things are beneficial. It's just entertainment. You do not have to watch everything in the world. I'm trying to watch everything in the world so that I can review everything in the world and have an understanding of the world and people's perspectives, and utilize a Christian narrative and moral code to interpret human art and morality. So, and Full Metal Alchemist is a very interesting look into human morality, and I would like at one point to make a much more in-depth review of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, but it's such a huge undertaking, I cannot do it in a simple discussion video. So I hope this gave you a little bit of my own perspective on Full Metal Alchemist. It's definitely not for everyone, definitely not for children, but it can be a really intense and enjoyable piece of entertainment that actually gets you to think. So, until next time, thanks for watching. Farewell.